We did not think about, how we were going to build long-term differentiation, because we're like, all of these things we will figure out over time. But if we don't figure out how to get someone to pay us money quickly, none of the rest of those things matter. So we were like, let's just focus on the first thing and we'll figure everything else out along the way.
I'm very excited to welcome Ashwin today, co-founder of Decagon, also a wedding officiant recently. So he's got a very long list of credentials on his list. But please join me in a warm welcome for Ashwin.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna go take it way back. We first met a little over 2 years ago. We were hanging out at a retreat in Utah. So we were living a tough life at a luxury resort at the retreat I was hosting.
First time that I ever cattle sorted. Never thought I would do that.
That's true. We did cattle sorting. Well, that's where we met. But more importantly, that's where you and Jesse met.
Yep.
And I think there's been a lot written and talked about it for co-founder dating. And you two kind of hit it off right away, it seems. So maybe talk through that of how you guys went through that co-founder exploration and when did you know you guys were a good fit?
This kind of happened somewhat spontaneously. So neither of us were particularly going out saying, hey, the next time we build companies, we want to do it with a specific kind of co-founder. But it just happened to work particularly well. So Jesse and I had very similar backgrounds, like shockingly similar backgrounds. Both of us had started companies before. Both of us had sold companies before. And so our view of what kind of company we wanted to build was very similar. Both of us had gotten married relatively young. Neither of us drank or really did anything much except work. And so we ended up just being very similar in the kind of company that we wanted to build, the way that we thought about company building. Both of us were going in with kind of eyes wide open to the fact that most of the time company building is quite painful. And, the way that we figured it out was, at the time, this was around about the start when both of us were like, hey, we want to start another company. And so we just kind of started working together a little bit. And we're like, hey, let's just kick some ideas around. Let's try to build some stuff together. And then it became clear that, we actually thought about a lot of things the same way.
And so you guys started working together. And I think, when we seated you 2 years ago, it was pretty obvious that you guys were already finishing each other's sentences, even despite, I think it was only a few weeks of co-working together. And so I'm curious, as you were going through the idea maze, because I actually think we funded you off a different idea. As you were going through the idea maze, I always thought that you had a very specific way that you guys iterated through ideas. And maybe talk through that, maybe for those who don't know, what are some of the ideas you iterated through and how did you decide the direction you would go?
I think that this was one of the things that we did very differently from, I think, both of our previous companies in that, or at least for my first company, I think I over-intellectualized things a lot. It was always, what is the long-term plan? Exactly how are we going to do this? So in 2 years, how are we going to ensure that we have the right competitive moats? And this time we're like, okay, none of that matters. And we will spend literally zero time thinking about that at all. And so effectively, all we did was we said, let's try and figure out what customers will pay money for quickly. And this was the only thing that mattered. We did not think about, the competition in the industry. We did not think about, how we were going to build long-term differentiation, because we're like, all of these things we will figure out over time. But if we don't figure out how to get someone to pay us money quickly, none of the rest of those things matter. So we were like, let's just focus on the first thing and we'll figure everything else out along the way. Going through the idea maze for us was very specifically just focused on one thing, which was how can we talk to the right buyers and how can we quickly figure out whether they will pay us money? And, as we iterated through the idea maze, instead of focusing it on ideas, we focused it on kind of buyer personas. We're going to start by targeting, VPs of sales at like these kinds of companies, or we're going to work through, cybersecurity, like CISOs at companies around the scale. And then, you figure out the problems that they have and you learn about them and you see if there's an interesting company to be built in the space. This was right around the time of, I think, GPT-4 had just come out at the time. So of course we were very focused on, these large language models have just come out. They are just about good enough now to start replacing the work that human beings do. And the question was, what work is it that is valuable enough to kind of automate and streamline and replace right now? To do this, rather than building prototypes, we're like, let's go talk to 25 VPs of sales and just figure out what their top problems are. And literally all we did was we would get on calls with these people and say, as you're thinking through the next 6 months, like what is top of mind? So we kind of pivoted around quite a little bit, as you can as you remember. But the thing that honestly kept pulling us back toward customer support is, as our kind of initial beachhead use case, was that if you think of kind of every large operations team, specifically within consumer businesses, customer support is one of their largest line items, right? And so rather than us kind of going out to support, this was something that we kind of got pulled into, because as we would talk to operations leaders, they would say, "Yep, I have these problems, but the real thing that hurts me is customer support." That's how we kind of navigated our way into the space.
I remember there was this moment where like you and Jesse came to me and said, "Hey, I've got this great customer over here that wants us to do this ops thing."
Yep.
And they were the best at ops, right?
Yep.
They were like a big marquee customer. And then I had, a handful of customers here that want me to do customer support. And I remember I don't know if you remember that conversation.
Yes.
I'm curious, what that moment you were thinking about building two products. What ultimately gave you the pull to pick one?
For us, it was all about customer pull, right? Because we were like, you're right. We had this like great customer that was, very well known in the tech industry, shiny brand that was like, "Hey, can you help us with this stuff?" But the more we dug into it, the more we realized there's only so many companies that have that kind of ops problem, and the amount that they were willing to pay was much lower than you would think. Whereas customer support was, much broader. And interestingly, despite the fact that it looked crowded from the outside, you had a number of kind of operations and support leaders that were talking to us, right? Like if theoretically this was truly a cutthroat, competitive, crowded space, why would you have, sophisticated, well-informed buyers talking to what was at the time 2 guys in a closet? But we kind of use the fact that, you have these well-informed buyers that everybody wants to sell to that are still talking to us because their needs are not being met. And we're like, okay, between the two of these, one of these is a far more compelling kind of venture-backable business.
And I remember so distinctly, you guys went full force on customer support.
Yeah.
Obviously ended up being the right decision.
Yeah.
And, now the term gets thrown around founder mode a lot, but it wasn't thrown around then. But actually, you guys built with really just you and Jesse. I think you hired one other person all the way through the Series A. And so talk a little bit about the decision of when you decided to double down and hire versus why you decided to do what now people would say more founder mode in the early days.
In the sort of very, very early days of the company, so think, months 0 through 1.5, we kind of wanted to honestly keep that flexibility, because both Jesse and I were technical, and both Jesse and I would get on sales calls. It ended up being that, the fastest iteration loop that we could have was just the two of us. And so I think we kept the team to just the two of us until we were probably about $1 million in revenue, at which point we're like, okay, clearly this is working. We should probably get some people to help us build this faster, because the customer pull is there. And by that point, we had a pretty strong opinion on what a good product would look like.
You didn't coin the term forward deployed, but I think you very much lived and breathed it before it got popularized in this new AI app generation. And so talk about that a little bit. I mean, you had some time at Palantir. I'm curious how much that informed some of the product as well as execution decisions today.
I think there were kind of sort of 2 phases of the business, and I think our motion here has changed a little bit between the two. I think forward deployed engineering, especially in the early days of a company. So think if you are, I think this group is mostly, seed Series A founders. Forward deployed engineers kind of lay the tracks down as the train is coming down. So I think at that point in the company, a lot of the forward deployed work we were doing was because A, we were selling to reasonably large customers. B, we were charging them reasonable amounts of money. And I define reasonable as, in the 6 figures. And, this was a product built by 2 people. So as you can imagine, there was a lot of maturity that the product needed.
You were sleeping a lot, it sounds like.
Yeah. And so kind of in the absence of that, what we did was the forward deployed engineering work was talk to the customer and they'll be like, "Oh, I need A, B, C, D." And we're like, "Great, let's go build those things." Now we sell kind of to the upper end of the enterprise, right? And I think at any point when you're selling software into the upper end of the enterprise, there's a long tail of things that you need to do to make a product work well just for them. And of course, you need to have a business where you can charge enough to make that economically valuable for you. But I think there's kind of two phases of forward deployed engineering. And I think sometimes people confuse the two. I think in the early days, a lot of it is you want to be able to have engineers close to the customer to honestly plug product gaps. And in the absence of this rich, robust platform, be able to kind of do those things. And I think this is particularly useful for AI companies today because all of these workflows and product primitives are so new, right? We don't have 20 years of SaaS history to say, these are the right product primitives to use. Oh, here are the kinds of workflows that people typically do for products like this, right? All of this stuff is new. All of these workflows are just being discovered. So it actually helps you a ton to be just kind of embedded with your customer, building things out. This is not necessarily a motion that you need to do forever, but definitely something that you should do in the early days, especially if you're building products with, kind of net new workflows.
I love that you have that distinction of pre-product built out, forward deployed versus post-scalability. What was the aha moment you realized, like, hey, I really now need to productize so you don't fall down the rabbit hole of, then you fall into like the tech-enabled services world?
I think it depends on the kind of products that you are building and how much money you charge for it, honestly, and the customer base that you go after, right? I think at any point, if you are selling to large, like the upper end of the enterprise, right, where you are charging 7 figures, 8 figures for software, there's going to be some amount of last mile work that you need to do, right? Because all of these customers tend to have their internal enterprise, like more legacy systems that you need to integrate with. And doing that work requires some amount of customization. But the thing that you want to try and do is say, I'm going to build a product that you can configure any different way, right? I think the distinction comes from, are you writing a lot of code in your core code base to build out net new super bespoke features? And I think that leads you down to the, tech-enabled service route versus I have this platform. It is extremely configurable. There's probably a lot of configuration that needs to happen, maybe a little bit of code you write to build out integrations. But once you do that, your customer can just use it for a long period of time, get a lot of value. And I think that is probably the route that you want to go down.
I think many people are wrestling with this exact challenge right now.
Almost never go down the first route. If you are going down the second route, make sure you have a business where you can charge enough for it, right? If you are doing all of this work and charging $20,000 a year, this is not going to be very pleasant. If you are charging $2.5 million a year, you can probably make that work for a while.
All right, so follow the money. It seems like
basically
consistent theme here.
Yeah, basically the only thing that matters is, will people pay you reasonable amounts of money pretty quickly? If yes, you can mess up all the other stuff and it doesn't matter. Whereas you can do all this right, and if you get that first thing wrong, also doesn't matter.
Diving a little bit deeper onto the product side, I think Decagon powers so many incredible companies today. I mean, maybe give the audience a little bit of the taste of some of the experiences that many of us probably had with Decagon through common products, or even your favorite, most meaningful.
We're at the point where we're pretty lucky to partner with a lot of the companies that hopefully several of you use. So if you have an Aura Ring, we power all of their global support. If you use Rippling for payroll, we work with them. If you've used Figma or Notion or kind of any of these long lists of products, we power their support. And actually, if you've rented a car with Hertz and either called in or written in, we also work with a whole bunch of companies that I think we do a lot of meaningful work for. So we work with companies that pair you with therapists online. For a lot of folks in some of their more at some of the lower points in their life, we help them find the care that they need. We work with companies that then help you navigate government benefits, and so being able to help those users get the benefits that they need to live well and support their family. So we're lucky to partner with a lot of great enterprises.
So maybe going back to the product, Decagon very much started in messaging. You've made a bunch of big announcements and releases in voice, so now multimodal. Give us a little bit of, what you think the future of different communication customers.
We are pretty excited to work with some great customers on this because we very much started in the support space, right? Or so the reactive support space, where a customer comes to the business and says, I have a problem, help me solve it. But if you think about it, effectively at its core, what we're building is we're building a platform for customer experiences, right? And reactive support is just one of those things. Because if you can do reactive support well, the next thing that you can start doing is understanding what drives inbound inquiries from customers and then moving on to proactive support, which is saying before a customer has a problem, can you reach out to them more proactively and say, hey, I noticed, this transaction got declined. Can I help you with this? Can I reach out to you proactively and say, hey, you need to move some money here. This is why your transaction got declined. Or, oh, I see this flight that you were on got canceled. I know that you typically fly this route. Here is a good alternative. Can I help you with booking that? If you can start doing those things well, you can start moving to revenue generating opportunities, right? So someone reaches out to me and says, hey, I have this problem. Can you use that opportunity to help them solve it, but also educate them on other products and say, okay, I know you're using this, but by the way, we also have this other product that we sell that could help you solve this issue. Would you like me to educate you there and potentially do an upsell? The kind of end goal here is to build a product to allow businesses to create a concierge-like experience for all of their end customers. Because if you have this agent that's very human-like, that is available to you 24 hours a day, that knows all your preferences with the business, that can guide you through all of their products and reach out to you when it thinks you need help, I think that is kind of the goal that we're building towards with a lot of these businesses.
Oh, I'm curious as you've got lots of really, really big customers. They have a large customer support team. And you've got a delicate balance, I imagine, to support a great labor base as well as making companies more productive. And so I'm curious, what are some of the ways that you guys have handled that?
Yeah. The very interesting thing about the space has been there's kind of two choices that something like Decagon open up for companies, right? Because at the end of the day, what we're able to do is we're able to say, hey, we're able to take a big chunk of conversations that previously a human being would have had to handle, and now an AI agent handles it end to end. Now, on one hand, you can say, hey, I want to use this to drive business efficiency, right? Where I'm going to have fewer people in my customer support team. But often what that typically ends up doing is these people just get reassigned to other kind of higher value tasks within the company. But two, and this is the more interesting one, they just provide more support, right? Because there isn't we're not near the limit of how much support businesses want to provide to their customers. So for instance, for a lot of tech products that a lot of people here use, there's not super easily accessible support, right? For a lot of your, for a lot of other services that you use, you have support from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific, Monday through Friday. So what a lot of these businesses do is they say, it's not that they don't want to provide more support, it's that they cannot afford to do it cost effectively for their business. If they see, oh, I can now provide all this support much more cheaply, a lever that a lot of them pull is to say, I'm now just going to provide more support. So now it's going to be 24 hours a day, and I'm going to put support on every page, and I'm going to make support, this tier of support available to every category of my customer base. So, sometimes people go one of two ways.
Well, I would very much appreciate my whole time on United to go down from 28 minutes to hopefully instantaneous. So please, can you fill United?
Yeah, no, we're working on it.
In the last couple of years, out of tremendous success from Decagon, many people have realized they should follow the money and also jump in this space. So I'm curious, talk a little bit about how you think about defensibility moats over time, especially in a market that has a lot of money in it.
In terms of defensibility, the thing that we've realized is that there's a lot of depth to doing this product well, right? On the surface, the one demo product is quite easy to build. In fact, it's so easy that it's often the kind of hello world of LLMs, right? It's like, oh, how do you build a RAG-based chatbot, right? But what happens is as you try and build a product that works in the enterprise, you need to kind of go through ascending layers of complexity. I think this is where a lot of the defensibility comes from. So layer one is often, how do you build a good agent that works at scale, right? Because we have several customers that have hundreds of thousands of conversations a day, right? And so if you're having conversations at that volume, you need it to be quite accurate. Number two, you need to be able to go through multi-step workflows well, right? So for instance, if let's use a throwaway example of an e-commerce brand. If someone says, hey, I want to return this order, oftentimes it's not just looking at a policy and giving them a link. It is saying, okay, first I'm going to go check the fraud database to make sure I can return it. Then I'm going to go check, what status level this member is. And, if they're gold status, then you just accept the return no matter what, or otherwise they're silver status, offer them 50% of their money back. And if they accept it, then process the partial refund and things like this. So this idea of supporting complicated multi-step workflows and doing it in a way, most importantly, that non-technical users can build in. So this becomes your kind of second level of complexity, being able to do this well. Then once you need to do this in the enterprise, you need to have a lot of controls around governance, right? So not anyone should be able to go in and click a button and change interactions for millions of people. So it's thinking through, how do you do reviews? How do you do rollouts? How do you do rollbacks? How do you understand in my millions of conversations, what is going well? What is going poorly? If something goes poorly, how do I catch that well and surface that? So what starts off as a very simple product ends up having a lot of layers of complexity, and having something like this work effectively within the enterprise kind of requires you to have all these pieces built out before it works well. So I think a lot of the defensibility comes from sort of deeply understanding these workflows, building them out into a product that works well. And also, of course, there's the technical backbone to kind of make this work well, right? Like, so you need models that are fast, that are efficient, that are accurate, that can work well over chat, over email, over phone calls. And so I think it's this kind of combination of these two things that drives a lot of defensibility and also drives a lot of value to our enterprise customers.
I've watched you guys since you were two co-founders, and I think you just said 200 employees
We're
now,
about 200.
And growing at a very rapid rate. And I think one of the things that Decagon has done such a great job at is being known for having phenomenal talent density. So maybe give a little bit of insight into how you guys built that up. For those, I think hiring in Silicon Valley is probably the hardest thing right now ever. What insight can you provide to everyone who's trying to hire an engineer right now?
Unfortunately, that's one of those things where if any of you have insights, I would also love to hear from them. No, I think hiring today is difficult because there's so many great companies that are all doing interesting things that there's a lot of demand for great engineers. I think in the very early days, one of the things that we tried to do very well, that we tried very hard to do, and in hindsight was correct, was not dropping the talent bar. And in the early days, especially when things are working, this can be quite hard. And the reason it's quite hard is when things are working particularly well, you have a lot of customers that are coming in. You have a lot of feature requests that are coming in. There's a lot of things that are breaking, and it's very tempting to say, I really need someone. As a guy that I just talked to, a guy or girl that I just talked to, not great, but they can do the job for right now. And I just need someone to do the job for right now, so I live till tomorrow. I think the difficult part with kind of giving into that is, let's say you do that for 3 people. Now, the 4th person that you want to bring in, and you're really excited about this 4th person, they're going to look at everybody else that they're working with. And then that's the difference between them saying, wow, all the other people here are really smart. I would love to work with these people, versus, I don't really think I'll learn anything from these people. The company seems cool, but I don't love the people that I'm working with. And so having a high talent bar means over time, you build a group of really great people, and it actually becomes easier to hire that next really great person because they come in and they're so impressed and they're like, wow, I would love to work with all these people because I can learn from all these people and all these people are amazing. But actually, kind of biting the bullet and like wading through those painful first several people actually pays off later on. And it's actually really difficult to do in the early days when you're like, I just need someone to come in and kind of help me with this stuff. So that was probably one of the things that we did well on the talent side.
Oh, it's definitely shown. And I think, regularly Decagon is up there with, most desired to work at location or a company. So you did a great job there. In 5 years, how do you want people to describe Decagon?
At its core, we're building a platform for customer experience, right? I think there's kind of no limit to the kinds of experiences that businesses want to create for their customers. Great customer support is just one of those things. So ideally, the goal is in 5 years, Decagon is seen not as, the platform for customer support, but a platform to build great, unique experiences for end customers.
And do you think in the future we'll know if we're talking to an
I think actually one of the OKRs today is we're putting together focus groups of real people, and it's a certain percentage. We want to get to a certain percentage of people don't realize they're talking to an AI agent.
What do you think the percentage is right now?
30% of
Wow.
focus group should believe they're talking to a human being, or we don't want to trick people in the real world, but it's more we want the experience to feel so natural that if we didn't tell you, you wouldn't know.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I'm a little scared that I'm probably in the 30% that has already been tricked, but that's probably true. What advice would you give to a room full of early stage founders building in this current AI hype cycle of how they can stand out from the crowd?
Yeah. Pretty much the only thing to do is talk to customers. And by talk to customers, I mean, talk to buyers of software, right? Like, don't talk to, your friend at this company that you know and ask them about their problems. Talk to someone with a real budget that you would want to sell to. And if you can find, start with a small number. If you can find 3 people of similar companies that would pay you a reasonable amount of money for something that you could build, go build that as quickly as possible, and then try and actually get them to pay you that money, right? And someone that wants to pay you money is not, oh yeah, that sounds kind of cool, that would be useful. It is, oh yeah, this is a really good idea. We're struggling to do this right now. If you can do ABC, I would sign a contract for $75,000 a year. And if you can get a small number of people to do that consistently, then there's probably something interesting that you can build there. So don't do anything except finding a person that says that sentence to you. Everything else is honestly a distraction.
Please, everyone give Ashwin a huge round of applause for spending his time with us here tonight.